Oh, well, hey folks, it's your old pal, King Waspinator. Welcome back to Total Party Skills. Be sure to hit like and subscribe. Everyone has been subscribing lately, and you don't want to be late to the party, so get on it right now. Uh, I guess I should talk a little bit about the one D&D announcement, little video they put out yesterday. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of analysis from plenty of channels who are going to do proper reaction videos and dissect every last little second of everything it had to say. To me, there's three things that were said in the video that kind of stand out to me, and I maybe deserve a tiny bit of commentary. And also, I kind of feel in some ways kind of almost like a reverse psychology kind of thing where I feel like they kind of revealed the unspoken parts of what's going on there at Wizards of the Coast and the people behind Dungeons and Dragons and where they're going and where their mindset is. The first thing, real early in the video, there's some fat guy who is insisting that they're not going to take anything away from you. They're just going to be adding even more options, which, we've been through this before with Dungeons and Dragons, going all the way back to the 90s and late 80s, around the time that second edition AD&D came out, and increasingly became overloaded with options, which annoyed the original player base, who preferred the set of options that they had originally been presented with, and didn't necessarily want a bunch of new options. But of course, as the game gains in popularity and brings in more people, and those people aren't necessarily in the same mindset or looking for the same sorts of things that the original player base was into, they make little tweaks and changes and add new races and make it so you can customize your character however the hell you want and all that kind of stuff, which on the surface, doesn't sound like that's terrible. I mean, what's wrong with having more options? People love options. It's what's freedom is all about, right? Is getting to make selections and not being limited in your choices. However, AD&D is not supposed to be like a simulation. It's supposed to be a game, and games kind of need certain set parameters in order for there to be any sort of semblance of fairness and so on and so forth, and consistency between people moving from one person's game table to another person's game table, so they know what to expect, when entering a game environment. And there's just the way, the tone, the way the guy said, we're not taking anything away from you. I feel like it kind of underneath that is the genuine fear that while the company has made its choices as to who it's going to stand with when it comes to social media controversies, they do still on some level realize though that their bread and butter is paid for by the older gamers who actually have the money to afford all this crap. The second thing that was mentioned, one of the ladies they had in the video, just as a kind of a little aside in the middle of what she was saying, and it was something along the lines of and all these interesting new people that we've brought to the hobby with 5th edition. I would like to think that there might have been a note of sarcasm in that. Perhaps not. It might have been meant earnestly, but I think we all know what they mean by all the interesting new people that they've brought into the hobby. That's a subject for other people's videos or other videos I've made myself. So it just strikes me as an interesting turn of phrase. The third thing that I think stands out from the one D&D video, though, is the insistence that this isn't a video game. It's a digital playboard with digital miniatures, so that everyone can, have the same visuals and a nice consistent board layout with plenty of resources for dungeon masters to use and set up, and players can customize their digital mini for their character and so on and so forth. I'm curious exactly, because I don't remember hearing any of that in the video, but I'm curious exactly how much this is going to cost people to sign up for. You know, it does sound like a way for them to be able to like finally get some money out of the players on a more reliable basis, because you want to have to pay for your access to your one D&D account, and probably in the end, they'll fish some money out of you to get special character skins and outfits and other accessories that can go with your character model and stuff. Not under the auspice of helping your imagination by giving you a bunch of static resources that actually will limit your imagination. Part of the why I've always myself been real standoffish towards the use of miniatures in role-playing games is it takes it from being something that's entirely built inside of your imagination to something that you're physically looking at on a board. And putting that on a computer screen, I don't necessarily think makes that any better. And in fact, the irony of trying to say that, oh, it's not a video game. Well, I mean, it kind of is. It's just a video game with a very different operating system. One person can control the setup for how the levels that the players experience, are designed. But there's a old thing about lots of role-playing games where part of the selling point of them is that you're only limited by your imagination as to what you can have happen in these games. And maybe that may or may not have ever been 100% true, but it was way more true as a pen and paper product that you're imagining the action in your mind than it is when you're limiting yourself entirely to a bunch of digital computerized resources in terms of what your character looks like, what your character can do, what your character has access to in forms of equipment, and so on and so forth. I also can't help but notice that the designs that they were showing off for especially for what the player character, mini icons could end up looking like, real Warhammer 40K-esque in the overall kind of design ethic. Maybe that's just me. It's not like I'm super familiar with Warhammer, but you see how people paint their minis and all that kind of stuff, and it just seemed a little similar. Like they're trying to, oh, Warhammer 40K is doing popular. I guess we better try to cut in on some of that action too, instead of just focusing on making our product the best product it can be. They're also, the entire trend towards playing games online, on live streams, and using resources like D&D Beyond, and now them wanting people to use one D&D. It's just weird that at the same time, we're all being told that we're killing the Earth and we all gotta reach carbon neutral territory in order to be able to turn the ship around in the right direction and all that kind of stuff. And yet, at the same time, there's so many things that are trying to make us continuously more and more dependent upon the use of electronic devices for various things. Obviously, not just for gaming in this instance, but commerce and your social life, everything. They want us to be more and more dependent on using electronic devices that require electricity and rare earth metals and all sorts of plastics and other things that kind of fly in the face of the stated goal of saving the Earth. If we were really serious about improving the environment, it's really not all that hard. We would plant more trees. We would continue on with the conservation efforts that we've already been doing for the last 30 or 40 years that have already been showing results in terms of allowing certain species to recover their population numbers from the prior century of overhunting. Maybe a little bit less packaging on all of our stuff. Maybe if the stuff that we were sold was designed to actually last a long time, so we wouldn't be having to constantly rebuy shit that we just bought and adding to the trash and packaging and whatnot that we're just kind of forced to have to leave somewhere in the environment. It's like maybe use a little bit less electricity by not having quite so many fucking electronic devices that have to be powered all the fucking time. Remember, what was it, when the PlayStation 2 came out and we were told how that thing was going to like last a good like 10, 15 years before they needed to have another PlayStation come out. And then it was like, what, 7 years later, the PlayStation 3 is premiering. Uh, the cell phones, horribly expensive iPhones made by near slave labor on the other side of the planet using rare earth metals that are often found in countries that we have to go to war over in order to be able to strip mine some lithium out of the ground and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we're there to fight terrorism, so it doesn't come here. It has nothing at all to do with the massive amounts of lithium to be found in them there hills. The fact that the entire planet's also never going to be on the same page, and so in many ways we're just kind of hobbling ourselves. This weird paranoid fears about like we're going to reach some sort of population maximum. Like, we've never had numbers this large. We actually don't have a high watermark to determine like what the human maximum is. Albeit if we really wanted to make a point about saving the planet, then maybe we should reduce the population a little bit. And yet every single time there's any news that the population is collapsing, we immediately be like, oh my God, our economy, we got to import more people, which kind of counteracts whatever benefits you might have had from, reducing your birth rate in your country and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. It contradicts itself in terms of like how we're operating versus what we're saying. And so it makes me feel that somewhere in there, one of these things is a giant lie. And I guess that's up to you to determine for yourself what you think the lie is. But in any case, forcing more people to have to funnel their gaming experience through like digital icons on a basically just a glorified gaming website is what they're proposing. And they can say it's not a video game all they want, but it smells like a video game and walks like a video game and talks like a video game. It kind of strikes me as it's probably a bit of a video game. And also, as I said, like, why the insistence, like, why do you need to put the denial of the thing in your introductory video? We're not taking anything from you. This is not a video game. Perhaps maybe I've just become too suspicious in my old age of things, but when I hear that and I'm thinking, okay, so what you're telling me is you're taking stuff away from us so that we can play this video game that you've made. A more standardized, controlled environment, somewhat akin to my speculation from a year ago when they were saying that D&D Evolution was on the way, and I was thinking that, maybe it might be something to do with Facebook's meta. D&D Evolution could be, a virtual reality environment so you can play D&D and look like your virtual representation of your player character, and you can have, prefab background environments based on, D&D locations from, famous books and settings and shit. You can actually, you hang out with your friends as your character in the Inn of the Last Leaf house thing from Dragonlance, or you can explore Waterdeep or any of that kind of shit, which, I mean, I'm not going to say that there's not a level of that where it couldn't be cool, but that's not really what Dungeons and Dragons is now, is it? And, if you're having to change your product so much to try to, stay relevant, at what point does it stop actually being the product that you were selling in the first place? Role-playing games were really hot there for a while in the 80s, and especially in the 90s with the rise of other titles beyond Dungeons & Dragons, such as, the World of Darkness games by White Wolf and such. And then they all kind of petered out and died out in the early 2000s there for like almost a good decade. And a lot of that, I've always personally suspected, was just because, well, video game technology got better. You're able to have all sorts of role-playing game type, video games and video game experiences that kind of fulfilled a lot of what gamers were looking for when they were playing, role-playing games with their friends in an earlier time period. Except, minus all the headaches of having to network with friends and find enough people to play and be sure that you can all get together the same day of every week and not have things fall apart because so-and-so's got issues with their kids and suddenly they're not showing up, and so you got to figure out why their characters disappeared in the middle of this cave adventure you're on and all that kind of stuff. Video games kind of cleared all that up, but after a few years, you start to realize that the online MMORPGs and all that kind of stuff aren't really quite giving you the experience that an actual proper imagination-based tabletop role-playing game can give you. And, with the successful launch of 4th edition, which was somewhat crippled by the fact that 4th edition itself had some severe issues with its rule systems and such, largely in regards to the fact that it was so wed to its miniature rules. We've had a nice little renaissance, though, in the wake of that, of people getting back into proper tabletop gaming and experiencing the things about it that are different and, dare I say, superior to virtual-based realities and video games. And yet here we are, though. They've come full circle and are trying to overtly digitize the Dungeons & Dragons experience. And, once again, at what point does it stop being the thing that it was? And, companies, they don't care. The people who are, financing and making these decisions aren't real gamers. They're business executives who are just trying to, manipulate, marketing research to try to maximize their profits and all that kind of stuff. They have all the motivation in the world to try to change Dungeons & Dragons into just basically a floating IP to base video games, films, and television shows are, because they can make more money that way. Dungeons & Dragons, role-playing games in general, have always had the one critical flaw in terms of business, in that, easily 80% of the base of customers don't actually need to buy anything. The people who only play role-playing games, especially the casuals, have very little need to buy all the books and primary accessories, aside from owning a little dice here and there, or maybe having a miniature for their specific character they like to play, or maybe a player's handbook. In the case of Dungeons & Dragons, there's not a big impetus to go out and buy all this other shit. Only the dungeon masters really need to spend any money. But when, you're looking at it from a business point of view and you're seeing that, you have, 100,000 people want to play D&D, but only 20,000 of them are actually spending money on D&D. Well, from a business point of view, that seems like a problem. You're giving a lot of product away for free now, aren't you? And being that they're owned specifically by a toy company, I mean, they'd much rather sell some toys and some T-shirts and, license out the IP so they can get a little money from Netflix or from Paramount Studios or, whoever. And they're incentivized to make it something that it's not supposed to be. And I don't know if there's really an answer for any of that. I just find it ironic. And the fact that they make a point in that video of insisting that it's not a video game, and insisting that, we're not taking anything away from you. And there's this little aside of and all these interesting new people. Well, let's remember our favorite old Chinese proverb about interesting times and how that's not actually a compliment or something to look forward to. Interesting does not equate to good. So anyway, guess I'll get on with my morning, and you can get on with your day, and stay waspinated. Waspinated! Waspinated! I don't know, hit buttons and shit. Do it, or whatever. Do what you like. It's your life.